Hey, welcome to Stackable Church. Glad that you were able to join us for the last live stream of our series of live streams until maybe possibly the fall 2020. I'm really excited in particular about this live stream as it is going to tackle maybe one of the areas that I found maybe the strangest and enriching experiences of having to go digital, in that we're talking about worship today. And there's obviously an individual element of it as well as a corporate element. And I've experienced things in corporate gatherings and worship settings that I've never experienced in my own private time of worship. But both are essential to the Christian walk. But I think what was been interesting is watching the church grapple with the digital element is it was the collision of those two worlds, your personal and your corporate worship. In as much as some of the people that we lead are worshiping by themselves at home in a corporate manner digitally, but it was a interesting interface and certainly adjustments for me personally on the receiving end. And I'm watching worship leaders adjust on the sending end. And so I'm interested in the conversation we're going to have with just three fantastic worship leaders from across Canada about what they've learned about leading worship in virtual elements, what's worked in this digital world. And as the church is now looking like it's beginning to at least engage in analog gatherings of some sort, and will be over the coming months, I'm really interested in hearing that were there lessons, were there elements that maybe they learned or thought of that could help them move forward in analog/digital environments in the future. So I'm glad you joined us for this conversation. I want to encourage you to jump into the chat room right now. Just say hi, where you're visiting from, and I'll introduce your chat host in just a moment. But jump in because you can ask questions throughout this live stream. We'll be together for the next 55 minutes together, and you'll be able to ask questions, and all of our worship leaders will be responding at the end. Matt in the chat room will be putting all of their social media channels so you can follow them and maybe follow up with them, or at least follow what they're doing. I'm not going to commit them to responding to everything, but I will commit that they will post good stuff, right, guys? Good stuff. So let me introduce you from starting from the Western Canada to the furthest east. I'm going to start with Luke. Luke is in Victoria, BC. Luke is the worship pastor at GT Church, and there he's overseen the release of a number of albums. He's a dad to 5. I just learned it was 4 boys and 1 girl. Luke, that's impressive. In this day and age, 5 children. That's a lot of work. That's a big commitment. I first saw Luke lead a worship gathering at a conference in Victoria, BC, and I was taken with his authenticity. The way he was able to engage with a large crowd there and pull us right in with him and reflect glory to Jesus. I just thought it was a fantastic moment. He's also collaborating now and joined a number of Canadian songwriters in a I don't know if it's a group or a project, the Royal City Worship. And he's featured on their debut release, Come On Heart. Luke, why don't you just say hello, and I'll keep the introductions coming.
Hey.
Perfect. Short and to the point. I love it. Melanie's next up. Melanie, now, if you see her name, and I've seen it digitally in a couple of places, and I see the accent aigu over.
Aigu.
Yeah, there you go. So a French Canadian, but Melanie is the worship. I got to get the title properly here. The worship and arts director at Central Community Church in St. Catharines, Ontario. Melanie has this powerful voice. But if you've ever been in a worship gathering she's leading, it almost feels like she's the only one in the room, but you know you're right there with her because she's drawing you right in as she worships God. It's infectious. It really is an infectious experience. She has 2 boys. She's married to Justin, and I know Justin, and he's just an incredible guitarist in his own right. But he's not going to debut on this apparently, which is very unfortunate. But Justin, you'll have to do a cameo, just walk by at some point in this live stream. But Melanie, why don't you say hello to everyone here?
Hello, everyone here.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
Bonjour à tout le monde. Yes.
And that brings us to Richard. Richard's in Toronto. Richard's from Indonesia, Dallas, Montreal, much of his youth in Montreal, and now more recently in Toronto. Married, no children yet. He is a hip hop artist. That is his original kind of recordings. You can find him on Spotify under the stage name Komodo. But he is the worship leader at One Church TO, passionate about elevating Jesus, passionate about the next generation and engaging them. When you say hi, Rich.
Hate it when Jonathan does all these introductions and gassing you up, but hello, looking forward to it. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I should be saying self-deprecating things about each of you, right? The things. Matt Smith is in the chat room. I'm going to introduce you to Matt. It's really cool that we have him actually moderating our conversation today. Matt's been the creative director here at One Church TO for a number of years. Richard, is the music pastor at One Church TO, but Matt is also a professional drummer by trade, a multi-instrumentalist in himself, and he's our weekend architect. He kind of designs our service gathering environments at One Church TO. So why don't you say hi, Matt?
Hey. The unmuting is a little painful. Sorry about that.
That's fine. Well, listen, we're going to jump into our conversation. Again, jump into the chat room, say where you're visiting from, be prepared to ask questions. And we're going to start simply with so you can get to know some of these people, and you may know some of them already by name, but I'm going to start with you, Melanie, but I want to simply explore like how you've arrived at where you are. So maybe, how did you get started in music? What were what instruments do you play, and how did that get rooted? And I'd love to understand the original roots of music that influenced you. Maybe it was a style or a form of music that really influenced you. And how did you ever get to a place where you're leading worship in large corporate gatherings? And maybe you never envisioned that. Although, Melanie, I see that you've been leading worship since you've been 15 years old.
Yeah.
That's a long time. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey?
So let's go then way back. I grew up in a small northern Ontario town of Timmins, actually, and it's about 8 hours north of Toronto, if you don't know. So for the first 17 years of my life, I was part of the same church where I started singing at the age of 3. So I'm what I like to call a church-trained musician. So I've gained all my experience from mentoring, from seeing potential in me, and then for me watching, and then learning, and then actually leading worship. And I started at the age of 15, like you said. And so my roots are worship through and through. My family, everyone plays or sings something, and mostly in the strings area, violin, cello, or huge into bluegrass. But for me, I've just grown up singing and in church, worshiping. So I did continue my education and completed a bachelor theology degree with minor in church music at Summit Pacific College out west. And then my husband and I met there. We got married, and then we went to Guelph for 7 years, and I did worship there as well. And then now we've been 9 years in St. Catharines. So for me, it's in my bones, worship music.
That's great. Thanks, Melanie. What an interesting journey. How many musicians, even professional musicians you see in the world, raised in the church, were schooled in the church with some of their musical roots. Richard, let's turn to you. Why don't you tell us a little of your journey, your roots, your background?
Here we go. So I'm half Indonesian, half Filipino, and I left Indonesia when I was 9. My dad's a pastor, so that whole thing with growing up around music and churches, it's always around you. My dad is so weird. He would have like 8 guitars and sells them, buys them. So I'm always around music and guitars and whatever it is. He tried to teach me guitar earlier on, but then I sat on it. So he's like, we're never doing that again. No more lessons. But when I was 9, I left to New York. Like you said, I was in Queens a bit, Pennsylvania, Houston, Texas, actually. And that's where I really picked up music and my passion for music. I got into this class, and like the first thing I saw was this French horn. And I was like, that's a sick, cool looking instrument. I'm going to pick it up and learn that. And so, with Texas, it's either football music or marching music, to be specific. So I was in that world of just constantly every day. It's rehearsals, practice, drum lines, and being around musicians, young musicians that love it. Went to all these different competitions, all state, all city. So I really love most of my theory. I'm a very I learned from just being around people in music. And so that influence helped shape a lot of that. And then in Texas as well as when I started making beats. In the cafeteria, lunchtime, it's you got one Latino guy. So I was with the Latinos who would have two pencils and just start making beats in the table. And then another guy on the other table is like freestyling, and we're just jamming away in the cafeteria. So that translated into Fruity Loops. Shout out Fruity Loops. For a while there, I was just producing with that, and then went to Logic, all these different things. So I actually went to school for it because I love making beats and just audio engineering and producing and all that good stuff. Did my own thing with church, just being around church. But I think Houston, when I played in the church, I started picking up trumpet. I bought a trumpet off of eBay and just learning on my own. And I wanted to play in the church, served in that way. Served in Montreal for a while. I played in the orchestra, Christmases. You came in, Jonathan, and I still was doing my thing there. Somehow got the job to be the creative director there under you after Jonathan Mann. Shout out to Jonathan Mann. Learned a bunch of stuff there. Got married. Left back to Indonesia. Worked with a church there from Assemblies of God in Seattle. Long story, sorry. Started leading worship, I guess, there, and even tail end of Montreal. Now I'm here. Somehow I got here in Toronto with you again, Jonathan. And I think I'm the rookie in the group, and I'm still learning. A lot of that is the influence of Matt Smith and just leading with him and alongside with him. So he's really shaped a lot of my vision and mission for music and really ministry. So that's pretty long, but that's it.
Well, listen, Richard, it's been a long journey. You traveled a lot of kilometers around the world to get here. So that's why it's a little longer story.
Absolutely.
Luke, why don't you tell us about your roots and some of the things that have influenced you and your journey to leading worship?
Yeah, I grew up with music kind of in my home. My mom was a musician. She actually wrote and recorded a couple kids albums when I was between the ages where I was 3 and 6, I think. So that was kind of around and present in the home. Faith was also present in the home. I grew up in the church. And so for me, just like growing up around music, with music kind of in and around me, started playing piano at a young age. And then somewhere, I think around 11, 12, 13 is where faith started to become real for me. Music started to become more important to me, something that I pursued. I picked up the guitar, just tried to learn every Hendrix and Chili Peppers like riff that I could. My mom and I actually moved at that point to the Gulf Islands, Pender Island, which it's between Victoria and Vancouver for those of you who are unfamiliar with the region. But small island, tight community, not much to do. So a positive outlet for a young kid would be just music. I just dug really deep. But it was around like 16, 17 that I started to play music in church. And then I just have a couple specific mentors that I owe so much to, who saw something in me and kind of pushed me into what was at that time scary and uncomfortable. And, that station of like, I want you to lead a song. I want you to lead a set. And so I began leading worship around that time. And that's really when I felt like God put his, poked my heart and said, this is what I made you to do. First of all, like, I made you as an instrument of worship, but then also I made you to lead other people through that. And so I started to think about what my educational path would be. I started to consider vocational ministry, and I decided that I would be the most qualified worship pastor if I were to go get a jazz guitar degree and then go get a theology degree. So that's what I went to go do. 2 years into jazz school, I'm immersed in the process and covered in jazz standards and modes, and I didn't ever lose my bearings on faith, but I certainly was outside of that routine of serving in the church in the same way that I had. I was kind of like, I'd stepped to the side of just kind of a pattern that would help me remember like that call that God had on my life. And so anyways, I kind of, I was 2 years into jazz school thinking like, good grief, should anybody even be paid to lead worship? I don't know. Probably not. That's just a great volunteer gig that I'll probably do for the rest of my life. And at that time, a conversation was struck up between me and a good friend of mine who was a youth pastor at Glad Tidings Church, GT Church here, named Andy. And so there was a position that was open for worship pastor. I kind of just was like, oh, right, that whole thing. And so that process began. I kind of just was like, God, if this is a door that you're opening, I'm just going to kind of keep walking forward. And sure enough, it opened and I stepped into it, and I was young and felt unqualified, but the Lord qualified me in every way that was most important, and protected me and just guarded my tender little young experience there, stepping into a new church, a large church, or what I thought was a large church. And fast track a few years. I used to hide behind my guitar. I was 23 when I took my job at GT as the worship pastor. They might have called me worship leader then. I'm not sure. I think I'm a pastor now. But that was like, the better part of 14 years ago. And so since then, my buddy, the youth pastor, Andy, who is my hookup for the job, he's now become lead pastor. And that's been a bunch of fun. And God's just, throughout my time here, has just awakened my heart to what it means to not just lead music and have people sing along, but just what it means to carry a burden for the worship of the church, and what we should be singing and what we should be singing about, who we're singing to, arming that corporate voice as something that would give glory to God. So I think that's a bit about myself.
Luke, thanks, man. Wow, that's all three of you, your hearts and the way God has directed you. And you see commonality, that there's been faith elements throughout all of your journeys. And music obviously has been a part of keeping you connected, as well as obviously a part of you serving. And I've asked each of you to lead an original composition of worship, because I think I love those CBC songwriter circles. I love those moments when we get to hear Canadian artists share something of their skill sets and their heart as expressed in song. And nothing better than to see your heart for God expressed in worship, in something that God has given you to sing. And so, Melanie, I'm going to turn to you first. If you could maybe lead us in a song that you've written, so that we can sit back and listen and absorb that. And then we're going to continue with some of our Q&A. Thanks, Melanie.
Yeah, thanks. This song I wrote actually on March 19th, I have here. And that was right at the beginning of this whole lockdown thing. And I don't know if you remember on social media, just death tolls rising, hopelessness, loneliness, just the anxiety, I feel like it was just around us. And so I started crafting this song, and how the world was searching for a cure. And of course, we know that God, who is love, who is peace, who is our hope, and him through us. And that's what would actually heal our world. So the song is called May Our Love Heal the World. And it's a song for the quarantined. May our windows be open so the lonely feel surrounded. May hope be sung louder so the fear will go away. May peace flood our homes through all uncertainty, and may love reach further than arms could ever reach. May your love heal the world. May your love heal the world. We're in this together. nothing can stop us. We won't lose heart. No, 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 no. We won't lose heart. May our windows be open so the lonely feel surrounded. May hope be sung louder so the fear will go away. May peace flood our homes through all uncertainty, and may love reach further than arms could ever reach. May your love heal the world. May your love heal the world. The sky is clearing, the earth revealing how it was meant to be. Compassion rises, oh yes. Kindness reminds us who we were meant to be. The sky is clearing, yes, yes. The earth revealing how it was meant to be. Compassion rises. Kindness reminds us who we were meant to be. Who we were meant to be. May our windows be open so the lonely feel surrounded. May hope be sung louder so the fear will go away. May peace flood our homes through all uncertainty, and may love reach further than arms could ever reach. May your love heal the world. May your love heal the world.
Wow, thanks, Melanie. I mean, this is something that I know I see Richard and Luke just cheering on there. This is what the arts does. The arts responds to even moments like this, whether it's COVID or even the racial injustice we're seeing in this world and the pain that's so acute. And the lyrics to that song, wow, powerful. And it has a way of saying it so poignantly, so much better than often a sermon or a talking point. And that's the beauty of the arts. Thanks, Melanie, for that. Thank you. Well, just moving and thinking about those virtual and digital gatherings and how we lead worship. And, Luke, I'm going to start with you. I just want to really get practical for anyone who might be listening in who leads worship, or maybe you're a lead pastor and you're part of designing worship gatherings or services. What have you been learning, practically speaking, about leading worship virtually in this season? Like, I'm sure it's been a learning curve, Luke. It's a new experience for many, but what's that been like for you?
Yeah, well, it definitely has been a learning experience. It's been all kind of new. I think that we can be grateful at our church for how we were actually pretty well positioned, all things considered. That didn't eliminate how stretching it has been this last few months. I don't know if this is the practical thing, but like one of the biggest things that I've been learning over these last few months is, like when the calling becomes work ethic, when like it comes to grinding out or just like pulling up your socks and getting it done. Those Sunday mornings that as many of us hopefully would resonate with, those Sunday mornings that you're having a hard time remembering all the stuff that you should be remembering, and it's just work. And then to kind of just step up to the plate and deliver the ministry that God has actually made you for. So that's like a lesson that all of us in ministry have learned over the years. But for me, realizing what that means when it's removed from people, like in a room, a bunch of people responding, singing back at me, how it looks different for me to step up to the plate when it's just me and a camera. It's forced me to consider like what digging deep it looks like in this season. So that's been kind of like, there have been some very uncomfortable moments of like self-discovery, of like, oh, what is my source right now in this moment. And so that's kind of, that's maybe to the side of the practical, but I think that that's an important thing to consider, is just like what it means to dig deep. Who is your source? And then why are you doing what you're doing when it's removed from, the context that we've all grown very used to, which is leading people in a room who physically and visibly are responding to where you're leading. Man, practically, I think that we've been learning, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but we've kind of established a couple changes in the way we do things with worship. So the way we're doing it, at least for probably the next couple months or month or so, is we're filming all of our band members separately and then compiling that. We're filming them all at studio spaces around the church that we've set up. I'm in one right now, but we're filming everyone separately and then compiling that and then gathering a worship set. And yeah, just I think what we've been learning is just the importance of preparation with musicians in a live setting. There's a lot of margin and kind of, room on the side, whatever those, bumper room, to nail it or not, but it's pretty exposed when you're recording. And that's essentially what we're doing. So another practical kind of aspect that we've been engaging, and again, it's not right or wrong, but usually when we're leading a group live, I always tell the team, like, I want your eyes open. I want you to be looking at the people you're leading, and I want you to be like inviting them into this experience. And that's been different. On screen, on camera, we've made the decision to kind of engage that moment of that person's worship in a different way, in more of like a personal way. And so each recording session that we've done, we've kind of, we start with prayer and just ask that, like, Lord, if you're the only audience for this moment, that's enough. I mean, it's maybe not enough for the metrics of people that are whatever, but I'm just kidding. But like, making sure that our worship team, singers and musicians are planting themselves in that posture of honest, earnest, authentic worship unto the Lord. Asking that, God, would you help this be an honest presentation that would please and touch your heart? And then the prayer is that the camera and the audio would capture that, and then people would be inspired. So that's been a bit of a shift for us in terms of like eyes open on stage, looking at your section, calling them along in the journey, versus now it's more like, if you want to close your eyes, if you want to look past the camera, if you want to, just like engage in your moment of worship, and let's get that honest capture.
Man, that's so good, Luke. I wonder, in this moment, this COVID-19 moment, which has definitely been jarring, how many people have been leveraged off their addictions? And I'm thinking of lead pastors, communicators, anyone, of needing people approval in the moments to, your soul, it's you and God in a room. And I know digitally people are present, but it's got to be, your focus gets shifted immediately. I love how you have refocused that to be this moment of authentic, which does communicate digitally, authenticity does communicate digitally of worship and intimate worship. That's fantastic, man. Richard, jumping to you. What practical things have you learned about leading worship in a virtual environment that's different than maybe what you were previously doing in our analog gatherings?
Yeah, it's 12 weeks, right? So I'm just noting some of the things, even as you're asking this question. And I think it comes down to three things for me, Jonathan. Quality, and these are my categories, and I'm not saying this is it, this is not, whatever. Quality, energy, and authenticity. So for me, I think of it, even if you're not musical, right? And we see it with like these late shows and Jimmy Fallon's or whatever. Even if you don't consider yourself as musical, when you put like a Melanie, what she just did in like a real raw way, but it's fantastic, high quality, high musical, like people in front of you, and they're doing their thing with their instrument, people will engage with that. And so for me, it's thinking about like what Luke was saying about just even the preparation aspect of it. And it's tough. Let me call it out, church, right? Sometimes it's like, my volunteer man has been struggling trying to like get them to learn the parts and things like that, or I have this conversation. But I think the blessing of COVID, and I'm be careful of saying that, is that you have to elevate that quality. Like you got to know your craft. You got to practice. We're talking practice. So you got to be ready. You got to be, and we're still doing it live in our context. And so even then, we're filtering out just people that are flexible, that are able to just pick up the parts. We're able to be flexible even in what we're doing creatively and just coming up with stuff. Like there's no heads up. Sometimes it's like Thursday. Okay, we're going to change it up. We're going to do a rap. We're going to do this. And so the qualities is one of the things that I think will engage people digitally and what they're watching. You put good product, good stuff in front of you, people will watch that and you'll have their attention. And then energy for me comes down to three things: physically, like physical energy, emotional, and spiritual. Physically, like Luke said, the freedom to be able to just, how do you engage with God? How do you worship at home? So I have a wife, she's lovely, but she, let's just say singing is not her gifting. And so
there should not be a but there, Richard. You should never say but.
So let's throw that out there. But she's a worshiper, man. So she would be walking around the house and just like singing out, physically just engaging, arms up and things like that. And so I'm interested in knowing our team and even myself, dissecting, like looking at myself in the mirror. How do I like engage with God when no one's seeing it, right? When no one's watching? What am I doing at home? What am I doing preparing myself? So physically, just naturally, as like I was watching Vulpec. This is Matt Smith's influence on me. Vulpec in the New York, they were in the garden. And these guys are having fun, man. They're like jamming out with their instrument, like a good bass player. The face they have, it's like you have blue cheese in front of them. They're just like distinct face, you know what I mean? They're enjoying their instrument. They're singing out. They're physically engaged with it, but also emotionally. And I think we have an advantage in that, like home court advantage in that I hope we can find our story in the songs we're singing, in our relationship, our journey with Jesus, and being able to connect emotionally with that. And I think when people see that, it doesn't mean like you're on your knees crying to God. People will do that and totally cool. But just how do you engage in that moment? And I'm asking myself that question emotionally. How am I connecting with? And it could be a line in the song. It could be the whole entire song, the idea of the song, but emotionally being engaged with it as part of my preparation. And then spiritually, that's easy. We're talking about that. And so for me, it's preparing myself. God, what are the songs that would help Jonathan's message in this moment? What would help the community in this moment with the temperature and the things that are happening in the culture, like Melanie's song, something like that? That would have been like a special that I would pitch at leadership and going, man, this song right here will hit all the vibes. And so, but that takes preparation. That takes, we're going to get there. The Holy Spirit just leading you and saying, what are some of the songs? What are some of the lines that we need to be singing and putting in people's mouths as they're engaging with our community? And then the last one is authenticity. And this is the biggest thing that I'm learning. And I'll say, like, even from Jonathan, one of the things that he's kind of taught me in the beginning, leading here, like I've never led in front of, I don't know what it is, 1,500 people in one church over the span of the weekend. But in the beginning, what I try to do is I try to be that Hillsong guy. Or even more specific, I try to be Matt Smith when he was leading the thing. And I wasn't even myself. And Jonathan, because of our relationship, he called me, he was like, who was that? You know what I mean? Like, who are you trying to be? I can't be the best version of Matt because I'm not Matt. Matt's going to be the best version of Matt. And so that authenticity, and what I love of that, the layer of it is I've enjoyed just watching different churches, when jamming at home, like Melanie's setting or, whatever, she's in her living room. that in a way is we're discipling people to say, you don't need the big crowd. You don't need to come to the church to do worship, to engage with God and to connect with Jesus. You can do it from your living room. And us as leaders, we're displaying that authenticity, being real, to say, I'm going to do it right here in my living room, and I'm going to connect. I'm going to have this moment to connect with Jesus with my instrument, no instrument, singing along with a YouTube video, whatever it is. But just finding that voice. Who are you going to be on the stage and off the stage? I'm going to be that loud guy with 4 espresso shots, super hype, super energetic. And I'll blend in a bit of hip hop because of my background and what I love about that in the songs and when I'm leading it, and when I'm doing verbal, when I'm praying, it's going to be my language, but it's going to be clear, or hopefully be helpful with the people that I'm leading and serving. And so those 3 layers have been like one of the things that I try to kind of filter as I'm leading the team is quality. We got to bump the quality, and that starts with me, with my vocals, with my playing, whatever it is that I'm doing, the energy. How am I engaging physically? Because that will help people to engage with us watching. Emotionally, how am I connected to these songs? Spiritually, preparing myself, connecting, having that Jesus moment before I lead anywhere, let it be on the stage, camera, studio, whatever it is. And then authenticity. It's the same Richard on stage, off stage, on camera. And that will translate. And I think the youth, when I was leading the youth, they can smell fakeness ASAP. And so I think that translates even to the digital. If you're not being yourself, that will like, man, that's not you, right? Like, so being real and finding that's my personal journey and self-discovery in this season. And I think it's really cool to be able to and I'm still learning. So those are the 3 that I can kind of filter through in these last 12 weeks of learning, leading through the camera and stuff like that. So.
That's great, Rich. You know, I like what Luke and you both highlighted, and that's the fact that you can't hide in the digital element. I think in live gatherings, and I say this to any of the preachers or teachers or communicators even, you can't hide behind your little cliches that get the response from people in the audience that might fill in the holes of maybe not a well-crafted message or a well-prepared message. It's been interesting even as a communicator to be watching and going or rewatching what people had to listen to, and even listening and getting feedback from my team to grow. There's an opportunity for me to rediscover a voice and to strip back some of the trappings that I relied on in analog environments. So I like that. You can't hide in these environments, and that requires a different level often from our volunteers and us as leaders. Melanie, what have you been learning through these virtual gatherings?
Yeah, a lot of similar things. Everyone notices everything, and it's exaggerated on camera. I mean, we're not new to being on camera, but for example, right at the beginning of lockdown, when we were scrambling and trying to figure things out for a couple weeks there, Justin and I led worship here from our living room, and of course, people would notice, the plants, and they were texting me of everything in my living room. And so we found that worship from home was meaningful in different ways. One thing that connected, though, very much was that we were saying we're in this together. And so that's been kind of a main idea that we've kept. And so practically, as I involved more and more people from my worship team, and at this point now I have 5 singers on, sending videos in every week from their living rooms, because like I said, we wanted to say that if our people can't be at church, then we didn't want to be at church. And that was an interesting thing for us. That was a big connection. And so we wanted for that to be a main point for us. And we found that really worked. But as I said, people would notice things. So we wanted to eliminate some distractions. I don't know if you ever watched anything online. You're like, how far were they actually 6 feet apart? These are things people are noticing. And in worship, we just wanted to take all of that away. Obviously great lighting, great audio, clean background goes a long way. And even things like, I understand what you're saying, Luke, about the eye contact and just being free to worship more so in this environment. And then at the same time, we don't need a crowd. We don't need a room full of people to worship. But at the same time, we're not leading an empty room. So, the power of eye contact does go a long way, because it's like you're reaching into that camera, and when I'm saying things, my team mocks me a little bit, and I point, and I'm trying to speak and reach right through that camera to whoever might be watching. But I'm similar to you guys. For us here, it's been a priority of worship first. And by that, I mean everything we've said, like just a vulnerable, a genuine, passionate worship. That's first. We've learned this lesson along the way. Creative second, and excellence actually third for us, because there were some disconnections. If it was really creative, maybe a creative lighting, and my husband is all about that, and video and different angles and all this stuff. But if we focus so much on that we lost the genuineness in worship, or the authenticity, then it didn't connect. Like we really felt that. And then in the same way, if it was sounding great, but people were lip syncing and we were losing genuineness in worship, we tried all kinds of different ways. And if it wasn't connecting, then we scrapped it. We're like, that's it. We'd rather, and at the beginning, a lot of my team, we were using iPhone. We just happen to have an amazing audio engineer on our team who makes us sound really good. But we were just, I said, I don't care. I want just them to be genuine on screen. And then now we're using these and we're passing them around. But that's been really important for us. Worship first, then creative, and then excellence. And I think that really goes a long way. And even like you said, I think Richard, you said that, like when I'm playing there, every once in a while when I'm leading to an empty room and, my voice cracks, or I just really get into it, and I tend to get really emotional when I lead worship, but we would just leave it. We're like, leave it. That's exactly what is needed for this moment. And so perfectionism out the window. Obviously, quality is important, but our worship for us is just number one.
That's so good. We have a little saying, passion over polish here, because you could get things really nice and shiny and miss the heart of what we're trying to do. So Luke, we're going to turn it to you, because we want to hear you lead us in one of your original songs of worship, and then we're going to continue our conversation. I see the chat room's just filling up with questions. Maybe Matt, we'll turn to you on the backside of Luke's song. Go ahead, Luke.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, you mentioned Royal City Worship, which is something that I've just recently, my involvement with Royal City hasn't been just recent, but Royal City itself has been a recent development. There's a network across Canada with, I think, strong pockets in Vancouver and Edmonton and other spots called Worship Central, originating with Tim Hughes and that from London. But the Worship Central Canadian team started gathering some songwriters and worship leaders, and that has become Royal City Worship. And so it's a bunch of people who are plugged into their own churches, many of whom, like myself, are engaging songwriting with our own teams. But Royal City is a collaboration kind of a few people across the country. This is one of the songs that we recorded at a conference in Vancouver, Worship Central Canada conference, like literally 4 days before everything shut down. And so we, it's funny to watch the video now with like a room full of people. And meanwhile, like, borders are closing and all that. But this is called Come On Heart. I heard it said recently that like, you need to speak to your soul, not listen to your soul. You need to speak to your heart, not listen to your heart. Your heart can mislead you. And then, Matthew 21, Jesus encouraging his believers, you speak to the mountain with your heart full of faith, it will be moved. And obviously that's not because we possess a power to see that happen, but it's the fullness of the power of the one who dwells in us. Anyways, this is Come On Heart. It is written, I believe every promise you will keep. I will set my eyes on you. I will set my feet on truth. What has started as a seed is now rising up in me. It is written, I believe every promise you will keep. I will set my eyes on you. I will set my feet on truth. What has started as a seed is now rising up in me. You speak into my heart and tell me who I am. The whisper of your promise, now a mighty sound. And every word you've spoken, stirring faith right now. Every part of me convinced Jesus' power is within. You say speak and it is done, so I will open up my mouth. What has started as a seed is now rising up in me. Yeah. You speak into my heart and tell me who I am. The whisper of your promise, now a mighty sound. And every word you've spoken, stirring faith right now. So I speak to the mountain, I speak to every mountain, and it shall be moved. For I know that every mountain has to bow to you. So come on, every heart, and see our God break through. Yeah, come on, heart. Come on, soul. Believe again. Believe for more. Come on, heart. Come on, soul. Believe again. Believe for more. Come on, heart. Come on, soul. Believe again. Believe for more. Yeah, come on, heart. Come on, soul. Believe again. Believe for more. Every part of me convinced Jesus' power is within. You say speak and it is done, so I will open up my mouth. Faith that started as a seed is now rising. Yeah, come on, hearts. Come on, soul. Believe again. Believe for more. What we've seen, it's just the start. So come on, soul. Yeah, come on, heart. Come on, heart. Come on, soul. Believe again. Believe for more. What we've seen is just the start. So come on, soul. Come on, heart.
Wow, Luke, man, that's that could be a modern day psalm right there. So many of the psalms, David or one of the psalmists is speaking to their soul. You know, why is your soul? Why, oh soul, are you cast down? Look to the Lord. Like it seems to be what that song is speaking right to the inner soul, man or woman of us. And wow, that was fantastic, man. Thank you, thank you. Well, Matt, I'm going to turn I noticed a lot of stuff stacking up in the chat room, and maybe if there's a couple of questions, some of the questions and where we're headed, because I'm going to ask these guys to look ahead to post-COVID-19 when they're back in analog gatherings, what will they bring into that? But maybe if there's some questions there that would be good, and just you can feel free to call out Luke, Melanie, or Richard, whoever might be best positioned, or anyone can jump in on these questions. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, great questions, guys. Keep them coming. We'll get to as many as we can today. It's been a great discussion already. Melanie and Luke, thanks for sharing those songs. Luke, I've been really enjoying that tune for the last couple of weeks. I saw it on Instagram or something, but it's a beautiful one. The recording is amazing. You guys got to go get it. Check it out right away. And Melanie, I hope you're putting that down on tape sometime. That'd be awesome. So real quick, maybe if we can do this more of a rapid fire round, a couple of practical questions to just answer really quick. And I think this would be valuable to hear from each of you. So Patty's asking, as you reopen, how are you bringing the best of of online versus on-site. So if you can just answer practically, are you pre-taping? Are you doing it live stream? How are you handling this moment when you're re-emerging into whatever this new future is? So maybe Melanie, we'll start with you, and then Luke, and then Rich.
Yeah, so we were already live streaming on Sundays, full camera, lighting, all that. But what we've noticed and what we want to keep is how direct this is. Like, I'm singing, I'm speaking to you. And so for online, it's gone such a long way. So we're actually, I don't have answers right now because we're navigating that right now. It's real time, but we're trying to keep both. We know that gathering together, we can't make that hard shift, of and not doing that again. And we don't want that, of course, but we also have learned and loved online as well in this time. So we're actually trying to do both and not go back to, and basically the biggest thing would be I guess even speaking though, we want it direct to camera, like it's just different. So we're trying to do both. Audio is a big thing when right now it's so multi-tracked and he can just layer everything just so perfectly, sounds so crisp and good online. We're trying to not lose that when we go back to live. So yeah.
That's awesome. So focusing on the video experience, but also inviting people to be able to watch it live. That's great.
Yeah, both. Our reach online for the unchurched, especially, it goes so much further. And we've seen that in our numbers. So yeah, we're trying to really keep both. Cool.
Luke, what are you doing?
Oh man, it's very classified. No, slash, I have no idea. Lord help me. Are there any suggestions in the chat? Anybody? No, I think, like, echoing Melanie, like we've discovered that quality goes a long way. And not that we didn't have quality before, but we have a tighter gauge on it. And so we are navigating, like, how do we move on? What does it mean for our live capture? And how do we crunch that, prepare it, and send it out in such a way that doesn't lose that quality? I would echo also something that Melanie talked about with the reach to the people who aren't maybe comfortable to come into the room, and how we've seen that too. It's been incredible to realize just how comfortable, or how much more comfortable it has been for people to re-enter or check it out for the first time, or like, I've got baggage just attached to coming in physically to this room or a church room, but still they're ending up online and checking it out, and how God's opening up hearts. And so we do want to maintain a quality there. So we've got some ideas, but man, sorry, I kind of gave you a few words without answering your question, but that's kind of all I got.
No, I think it's helpful for people to understand that we're all trying to process. We're all in the same boat. So thanks, Luke. Rich, do you want to give a quick summary of what we're heading to this weekend?
Absolutely. We're throwing things on the wall. Primary being digital. So we're still, 30% here in Ontario. So we're going to be focusing more on digital and creating that experience to be great for the 70%. And then the 30, whoever's going to be coming in, it's almost like, I think the conversation I had with Matt is like, if you come into like Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show kind of thing, that kind of like, audience feel, but the online experience is still going to be like up there for us. And, we're engaging the 70, so there's going to be more online. And I love what you guys said, just the outreach aspect of it. We're able to just make some noise for people that have never been to church and be able to experience it. So digital first, we're going to try out the physical and praying for the best.
Cool. Okay, Jonathan, maybe I'll slip one more question in here before we go back to the script. And guys, if you can just give your like Cole's notes on this, just because I want to keep time for some of the other questions we got going. It's been so good. I don't want to miss out on anything. So great question from Mike in Edmonton. He's just asking, some of the team are struggling with what is the value of doing live at the same time, even if it's online. Like, what's the difference between someone just watching it on a Wednesday versus the church gathering digitally on a Sunday? Just what's your quick philosophy? What's your take on that? Are you guys leaning into that gathering moment and with chat or other tools, or are you guys splitting up and it's like watch whenever you can? We'll go in the same order real quick. Just a few quick thoughts, Melanie.
I think it's habit. And so because of habit, and people are, at least Christians, are used to going to church on Sunday. My neighbors aren't. We've noticed since we've been home on Sundays, after we watch, we go outside and they're all there. But I think we are still doing the whole chat thing on Sundays because of habit. But I think the longer we stay online, that could change. And I could see that changing for sure.
That's great. Luke, what are you guys feeling there?
Yeah, I mean, this is just maybe speculation, but that's all I got. I think that the on-demand thing is important, but I think it's really important for the new person, the person who doesn't have the context or like foundation of community within that church family. So to have something online and on demand, accessible for somebody, easily like searchable, findable, clickable, for somebody who's just checking it out, right there at your fingertip. I think the advantage, stepping to the side to the like designated times, I think the advantage of designated times, as I see it, is just that affirmation of what community we do have. I'm encouraging as many people as I can to like get to a watch party. Don't watch by yourself in your bedroom because your roommate isn't a Christian. And do you know what I mean? Which is reality for some people, but I think if you can get around people, that's going to encourage your heart more.
I love that. We've got a Netflix culture, and so how you're adapting to that, as well as keeping community moments by watch parties. I love that idea. Rich, what are your thoughts?
Just writing down watch party, so we will take note of that. I seriously, it's all unknown. I would lean into that traditional, we got to be together. And there's still special moments whenever we get to see the chat room, when we're gathered together live and being there. But also there's so many content, right? People are just spitting out media and their worship time and their teaching. So I would say this, and this, I don't know if this answers the question. You got to know your people. You got to know your community, your city, the culture that you're around. I don't know who's going to be watching this, but for us in Toronto, adjusting to that and knowing the people and how do they consume media. But I think for the most part, you're right, Matt, calling it out. Like Netflix is kind of like the culture, I guess, in the grand part. I can't say that for everybody, but I guess a balance of both, and whatever is going to be the tipping point for your culture, for your community, your church, your leadership. You gotta determine that for yourself. So you got to ask those questions.
That's great. Thanks, guys. So we'll try and get to some more later, but Jonathan, take it away.
Yeah, thanks. Those are great responses. I know the conversations here, it's not unique to our campus or One Church TO, but we're really trying to envision ourselves as a digital church with a physical campus moving forward, because the potential that we have seen in the limited period of time, like you, Melanie, we've been live streaming for a couple of years in a One Church TO live church, we call it, campus, but what we've seen it amplified into. And, people say it's the church gathering digitally, and we'll see how much they really meant that when we gather back physically. Because I do think that both are so valuable, but I think the opportunity in that digital sphere is so great that we will continue. And we've been fooling around with some thoughts, so don't hold us on it. And if you go to One Church TO and you're watching this live stream, don't hold me to this, but we even are having initial thoughts of, okay, we've noticed that our streaming times, the more condensed and less length they are, the more engaging they are. And so we have gone with shorter service times, and we'll probably do that in our physical gatherings. But we're talking about, if people come into the physical gatherings, adding 15 minutes of bonus live worship at the end of the gathering for those that have engaged there. But in our digital one, we'll make sure that it serves the digital church first too, in this next iteration, because we were there before and we'll be there after, but we do sense that God has really shown us a lot of potential in those things. A little bit like going to a Raptor game. They have the TV timeouts, Toronto Raptors, and so if you're not a basketball fan, but they have TV timeouts, and it's because they're serving the 3 million people watching, while there are 20,000 in the actual live environment. But they do something unique in the live environment, whether it's dancers on the stage, or they do something different that keeps it valuable, just different. So we're trying to say, how are we going to bring incredible value to our physical gatherings and our digital gatherings in this next iteration? They may not all have all the same pieces, but they have to have equal value. But blah, blah, blah. Okay, I want to keep moving on. Here's a question for you guys, and then Rich, we'll have you close us out with a song. But I wanted to ask you this, because I know even speaking, but I'm thinking even more of worship leading. You have those moments where you know the Holy Spirit's speaking to you. And some of this, obviously, as you mentioned earlier, Luke, and you all reference, happens in the preparation even. A lot of that happens before you ever get to that moment. But there is that element, you not only feed off the crowd, you sense what God's doing in the room. And that was taken away from you in many ways. And I want to know, how did you do this in a digital environment? Like, how did you hear from God and sense God even in a worship gathering moment? Because it is corporate worship. It's just, they're spread out. So what did that look like? How did it feel like? And how have you adapted? And I'll start with you, Rich, because you're going to be up next.
Sure. Short and sweet. So I would say this, because maybe of the COVID season and the pivoting that we did as a team, adjusting and finding angles and places and sound and quality and all that stuff. As well, maybe I think personally, just journeying through personally with whatever's going on in the world, and this is a challenge to myself, I found myself really being able to lean into the Holy Spirit and to God in just my own life, but also my responsibility to lead worship. And the beauty in all of this is, for us as one church, we were encouraged to work from home. And so for me, I don't have to wake up at 5:30 a.m. to drive my wife to work and then come back. And then that whole busyness of life is now slowed down a bit. And I think that is a blessing for me personally, in that I'm finding time to just water my plant, walk my dog, and pray. And asking God, like, God, what do you want us to be singing this weekend, or this season, this series, this teaching, and being led in that way. And so a lot of the suggestions, a lot of the preparation, like Luke said, for me personally, is just those quiet moments, those moments that I'm isolated by myself, and just, hey, God, what do you want? What do you want me to do? How are you going to use me in this moment? And then the other layer of that for me is, there absolutely have been moments just in different gatherings, and I think we can all speak to that, where you're just sensing the Spirit moving differently. And for me, just as an example, this past weekend, I wasn't even in the team for this special song we did, Run to the Father, for Father's Day, Cody Carnes. And it was the 9:30, like I pitched the song 4 weeks ago, listened to it, came down, loved the message of it, and hit me personally. And then like 4 weeks passed by, and then I had a worship leader who was leading that. And it was like, Saturday happened, and then we had the 9:30, 11:15. It was at that 9:30, and I was hosting, where I'm going like that thug, like just something like in my soul, just going like, whoa. And for me, I came home with that, and I went, for me, the way I translated that, if this makes sense, is that particular gathering, somebody needed to hear that one line, that song, that reminder. And then I caught just one guy in the chat room just said, like, I'm a dad, and you said something in lines of like, yeah, we carry a lot as a father. I'm not a dad, but I carry a lot. People look up to me, but I can also run to my Father. And I'm just going like, there it is. That's why I do this. That's why we do this. So I'm excited to serve our church family. And so those just like pull moments in my soul, just going like, and it's a 9:30 random. I'm just getting ready to host, and I was broken down again, just going like, there it is. And if it's just for that one person, that one dad, I'll do it all over again. Right. So it's just different. It's not easier or whatever. It's just different. It's still the same, consistent in that way. Different gatherings, you're just tugged in different ways, and as you're preparing. But I personally, I feel like I've taken the time to really reconnect and just go deeper in preparing that part of the weekend. That's it.
That's great. Luke, let's jump to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it does look different. Our kind of standard form previous to COVID was like quite a bit of worship, actually, compared to many other churches. And it does depend on what service we're doing or what campus even, but typically like 20 to 25 minutes of worship. And that for me meant 4 songs. And COVID on screen, on camera, it's now 2 songs. So, instead of like 4 songs in the morning and 4 different songs at night and 3 other songs at a campus and 4 different songs at another campus, and like navigating, okay, like, Lord, what are the songs that you want us to be singing as a church this season? Across this, like on a weekend, we're covering a bunch of miles in terms of content. Now it's just all we have are those 10, 11, 12 minutes, a song plus a reprise, or a song plus a tag, or 2.5 songs is kind of where we end up landing. But so we lean into just like the Holy Spirit moving and speaking in the moment during our worship. And so it's part of how I lead, and it's part of how I encourage our team to engage. And that looks different when you're live in a room. But here in this context, what it's looked like is just me making sure that I have the time and space when I'm building out like a scratch track for the team to build on. Am I giving myself that proper time in advance? Lord, what do you want to speak to the people who would be watching and listening? What's the timely thing for the moment? And then also within those, like within that little bit of real estate, those 11 minutes, where can we go? How can we journey? And how can we engage something fresh, something new? And so whether that's, me giving myself the time to kind of explore that within a scratch track, or if it's like giving the time for me and a vocalist to explore that space when I'm recording a vocal session with a vocalist, or different musicians, that kind of thing. Yeah, but then also just, we're in this moment, we're weeks away from this recording hitting the screen and actually ministering to somebody, and just praying in this moment, God, again, we've said this before, but God, would you allow this to be an authentic, honest expression? And Holy Spirit, would you anoint this for that moment? And then just believing that will happen.
I'll tell you, this conversation has just given me an appetite to want to do a follow-up, because I like, even as you talked about, Luke, constructing space in your set even to make room for God to be, whether or not it's something in that moment you experience, or is it so tight that we can't, there's no flex, and yet you're on a condensed timeline. And I'd love to even talk to the three of you about what are you trying to disciple in worship? Because there's a whole theology discipleship aspect of even the songs you select, and we're not able to get into that today. So I'm seeing a part 2 sometime, because I think that would help a lot of worship leaders go from being song leaders to being worship leaders. And there's this aspect of stewarding the theology and the doctrine and the words and the voice that God is speaking to the church community corporately, a la we can borrow other people's songs, but what about specifically, which is so powerful. So Melanie, I'm going to turn to you. Melanie, how have you been sensing that, just the leadership of the Holy Spirit as you lead virtually?
The difference for me is just heavily relying on the Holy Spirit for to anticipate. We've already kind of said that. Anticipate what people need to sing. I'm big on that. If I'm leading worship to camera on a Monday afternoon, which is what I'm doing right now, for the following Sunday, it's not happening real time. It's happening ahead of time. So it's not harder or easier. I would say it's intentional, and intentional requires time. It requires work. It requires being present with God and what's going on in our world. So my prayer, like literally, while Justin and Dan are my team are getting the camera and the audio ready, I'm before I lead, I'm saying, God, what will their hearts need to sing or to hear in my prayer in light of what's happening in the world right now. And it's been different from week to week. I feel like at the beginning, when things were just so crazy and chaotic, my prayers were around peace. My songs were around encouraging. God, give us the faith, And then we moved into almost like wisdom. Show us, God, what to do. And even now, as we mentioned before, Jonathan, you did. Now for the church and for our church, we're singing songs like, God, I hear you. I'm available. Use me for real life change and to make a real difference in this world. So I would say my key thought is to rely on the Holy Spirit ahead of time, instead of real time, and to be intentional. And my song selections are very, very intentional, Jonathan.
You know, I love that word, and I hope everyone hears that online. Intentional is not unspiritual. And that speaks to a lot of what all of these leaders have been talking about, whether it's the preparation or designing sets in advance and how God will use that. I grew up in a tradition that maybe the more intentional and prepared you were, maybe the less spiritual you were. So obviously there needs to be that room, at least in our church, and every church tradition is different, but our church tradition has an aspect of the expectancy of the Holy Spirit in this gathering, in this moment. And we never want to be so intentional that we lose the ability to adapt and adjust to a moment or a gathering. But I think sometimes we've used that as an excuse for not being prepared. But that's a different lesson for a different time. Rich, why don't you give it maybe the last song of the day, and then we'll just close it out with a goodbye for everyone. Thanks for joining us at Stackable Church. It's been a great live stream with Luke, Melanie, and Richard. Why don't you lead us, Rich?
All right, this one's called Unbelievable, inspired by Jonathan Smith himself because of his message in Easter. And that was basically what it is. Unbelievable, not impossible, it is done. But the thing that I kind of started off with a bridge, if anything, it was this line: even when I'm in the storm, you're the anchor in the waves, Jesus, Jesus. And when I doubt, you lead the way, help me see the empty grave. And we're going to throw it back because I'm going to play with not a CD, but there's going to be backtracks. So forgive us. Forgive us. You know my worst, my best, but your love the deepest vow. You give me rest in my stress. You raise me when I'm down. You care about the process. You never keep the fouls. You lead me through the darkness, even when I have doubts. Unbelievable, not impossible. There is hope and freedom in the sun. Unbelievable, not impossible. On the cross, the one says it is done. And wow, perfect love defeating death. Jesus Christ, the living bread. Help me change in all my ways. Help me give you all my days. Perfect love defeated death. Jesus Christ, the living bread. Help me change in all my ways. Help me give you all my days. Oh, help me give you all my days. Jesus. 'Cause even when I'm in the storm, you're the anchor in the waves. Jesus, oh Jesus. When I doubt, you lead the way. Help me see the empty grave. Jesus, oh Jesus, sing it. Even when I'm in the storm, you're the anchor in the waves. Jesus, he will never leave us. When I doubt, even when I doubt, you lead the way. See the empty grave. Jesus, oh Jesus. Unbelievable, not impossible. There is hope and freedom in the sun. Unbelievable, not impossible. On the cross, the one says it is done. Hey! Unbelievable, not impossible. There is hope and freedom in the sun. Unbelievable, not impossible. On the cross, the one says it is done. And wow, perfect love defeated death. Jesus Christ, the living bread. Help me change in all my ways. Help me give you all my days. Perfect love defeating death. Jesus Christ, the living way. Help me change in all my ways. Help me give you all my days.
Thanks, Rich. I know the One Church TO community loves that song. And listen, what a gift, Luke, Melanie, and Richard, you are. And shout out to Andy Moore and Bill Markham, your guys' leads. I love those guys. I think the world of them. And I know that we at One Church TO, we're always poking and looking at you guys and seeing what you're doing in your environments. It's been so inspirational. And the generosity of your hearts, every time I've communicated with any of you, just so willing to serve and to be generous and giving. And I love that about you guys, and I love that about your leads. I love those guys because they demonstrate that same heart. Listen, anyone, 30-second goodbyes from each of you. We'll start with you, Rich, because you just sang. So why don't you give us the 30-second, then Melanie, then Luke.
Woo! This is what I love about Stackable. We're all here. We're all trying to figure it out. Leaders, praying for you, praying as you're heading into the season, thinking of you, whoever you are. And, we have a powerful, amazing God, and we have a powerful, amazing love that we get to share through music, through what we love. So praying for you, thinking of you. Let's do this together.
Hey, this has been a really interesting season, and I just want to encourage you as a leader, as a worship leader. You have whatever is in you right now. God has placed that for right now. So lead confidently, lead vulnerable, lead genuine, and lead with passion. People will follow you, and you just have to believe that for yourself. And I hope you're encouraged today.
Yes, there's a prayer in my heart and a burden in my heart to see the church rise up, to hear the worship, the sound of the worship of the Church of Canada rise up and bring glory to God. And so that's my prayer for all of us as we represent, the church of our nation. Yeah, so praying for you as a worship leader, that new songs and fresh fuel for your ministry would be yours.
That's awesome. And, I love Canadian worship voices, Canadian leaders helping to shape the Canadian church. And in French, First Nations, Anglophones, whatever it may be, coast to coast, I'm thankful for their voices. Thanks for joining us at Stackable this fall. We may be back with some live streams. You can, of course, subscribe. If you go into the chat room, you'll see the social media for all of the presenters today, as well as Stackable. You can follow us there. Love you guys. Thanks so much, Luke, Melanie, Richard, again, for helping us out. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of the day in Canada.